They say the desert remembers nothing, but that's not quite true. Under its endless golden waves, beneath the blistering sun and howling winds, secrets lie untouched for centuries, even millennia. Entire cities, once bustling with life, art, language, and ceremony, now sleep in the silence of the sand. Time moves differently in these places. The ruins don't speak, not in the way we understand, yet somehow their presence whispers through dust and stone. Across the world, deserts have long been both feared and revered, a place of exile, punishment, purification, and occasionally divine revelation. And in many of these harsh, arid expanses, human beings once carved out lives, communities, entire civilizations, before the sands carved over them, as if nature itself had swept the pieces from the board. This story begins not with one city, but with a question. Why do some cities disappear while others endure? The answer is as complex as history itself, and to explore it we must first understand the volatile relationship between humans and the desert. Unlike forests or riversides, deserts do not yield easily. They are not naturally suited for abundance or comfort, but their strategic locations, at crossroads of trade routes or near valuable resources, often lured people to settle. Caravans passed through carrying spices, incense, silk, and gold. Wells were dug, fortresses were raised, and in time marketplaces, temples, and palaces followed. Yet the very elements that made these locations valuable also made them vulnerable. A shifting water table, a new caravan route, a punishing drought, or worse, war. Abandonment came suddenly for some, gradually for others, but always inevitably. The desert doesn't just claim land, it reclaims time. Once the people are gone, the dunes begin their slow, patient work. Buildings crumble and are buried, roads vanish, even memories fade, until all that remains are rumors, stories passed down in fragments, reimagined in myth, sometimes dismissed as fantasy. And then, sometimes centuries later, the archaeologist arrives. Or the nomad stumbles upon a piece of carved stone poking from the earth. Or a satellite camera picks up strange unnatural shapes beneath the sand. Then the real work begins. Piecing together fragments, translating inscriptions, mapping old walls, and reconstructing not just structures, but lives. We live in an era where forgotten cities are being found faster than ever before, and yet, for every one rediscovered, dozens more remain buried, waiting, silent, just beneath the surface. These are not just the ruins of stone and mud brick, they are the remains of entire worlds. Worldviews, languages that no longer exist, gods that no longer receive offerings. But in the ruins we find echoes, artwork that shows people in daily life, contracts etched in cuneiform, burial sites that reveal rituals we can only get at. The desert, ironically, can be the perfect preserver. In its dryness and stillness, papyrus scrolls survive, pottery remains intact, even ancient textiles are sometimes found woven as tightly as the day they were made. Some of the greatest treasures of the ancient world were discovered in these conditions, and yet each excavation poses a challenge. How much do we uncover, and how much do we leave alone? The sands have protected these cities for so long, sometimes digging them up can hasten their second destruction, but the draw of these places is irresistible. They pull on the imagination like gravity. The city of Ubar, for instance, known in myth as Iram of the Pillars, was spoken of in the Quran and the Arabian Nights as a place of tremendous wealth that was destroyed for its arrogance. For centuries people dismissed it as legend, and then in the 1997s, satellite imaging and ground expeditions found what might very well be its remains under the sands of Oman, or Zerzura, the so-called White City of the Sahara, which may still lie undiscovered, a city of treasure and danger described by Bedouin oral traditions. Then there are cities we know to be real, like Akhetaten, built by the heretic pharaoh Akhetaten and lost for centuries before being unearthed again. Some were erased intentionally by successors, others swallowed unintentionally by the elements. What unites them is their silence, and the way they force us to imagine, to reimagine what once was. The stories of these places aren't just about old stones. They are stories about ambition, innovation, adaptation, and sometimes failure. They are stories about people who dared to settle in places no one else would, who dared to build amidst nothingness, who tamed the desert until it untamed them. These lost cities are not just remnants of the past, they are warnings. The sand is always hungry. Even today, modern cities in arid zones face the creeping threat of desertification. History has a tendency to repeat itself, not in exact patterns, but in echoes, like a rhythm you can feel more than hear. The more we uncover about these ancient places, the more we learn about ourselves. Their mistakes are often our own. Their ingenuity still inspires, and their disappearance reminds us of how fragile civilization really is. But there's also beauty in the mystery. Not every lost city needs to be found to be meaningful. Sometimes the myth serves a purpose just as valuable as the reality. It fuels the desire to explore, to learn, to question. In this series, we'll travel across vast stretches of desert, from the Rub al-Khali in Arabia to the dunes of the Sahara, from the windswept plains of Central Asia to the silent cliffs of the American Southwest. We'll encounter ancient traders, priests, kings, rebels, and ordinary citizens who once called these forgotten cities home. Some of the cities we'll visit are well known in academic circles, but little known to the general public. Others live only in legend, their existence uncertain, their locations unconfirmed, but each offers a story worth telling and a lesson worth hearing. We'll begin with the story of Ubar, the fabled Atlantis of the sands, said to have been destroyed in a single night. Then Zerzura, the white city that vanishes when approached. After that, we'll uncover Akhetaten, once the center of a religious revolution in ancient Egypt, now just crumbled walls and fragments of belief. And beyond that, Nia, Gao, Hatra, Leptis Magna, Petra, and even those cities that remain undiscovered, mere shapes on a satellite image or words in a dusty manuscript. Together, these places form a hidden geography, a shadow map of humanity's past. So close your eyes if you wish. Let the sands rise around you, not to blind or bury, but to unveil, to tell you stories that were almost lost. This is not just history, this is memory. Memory etched into clay and stone, into legend and scripture. Memory preserved beneath the sand, waiting for the wind to shift and for us to listen. They called it Iram of the Pillars, a city so grand, so filled with wealth and splendor, that even the heavens took notice. The Quran mentions it in hushed, almost reverent tones, describing a people of immense power and pride, people who carved homes into mountains and defied the laws of mercy, only to be punished by divine wrath. In the stories told across Arabia for centuries, Ubar stood as both a legend and a warning. A city blessed with trade, drenched in luxury, and then swallowed whole by the earth or the wind, never to be seen again. For the Bedouins who wandered the empty quarter, the Rub al-Khali, the largest continuous sand desert in the world, Ubar was more than myth. It was a whisper on the wind, a lost city buried beneath the dunes, the Atlantis of the sands. And like Atlantis, it fascinated explorers, scholars, and adventurers for generations. Its existence hovered between fact and fiction, a place suspended in time, waiting for proof or dismissal. For years, Western archaeologists dismissed Ubar as folklore. They assumed it was merely poetic metaphor, a symbol for the rise and fall of arrogant civilizations, yet locals insisted. They spoke of strange stones in the desert, of ruins poking through the sand, of sinkholes where entire villages had vanished in a single night. Still, without evidence, Ubar remained elusive, until technology caught up with legend. In the 1980s, a new idea took hold. A team of researchers, led by explorer Nicholas Clapp and funded in part by NASA, wondered if satellite imagery could help locate ancient trade routes long obscured by sand. They were not looking directly for Ubar at first. They were looking for clues, roads, patterns in the desert, the ghost lines of caravans that once carried frankincense, gold, and myrrh across the Arabian Peninsula. The incense trade was a major source of wealth for southern Arabia in antiquity, and cities like Ubar would have flourished on its profits. Using Landsat satellites, the team began scanning the Rub al-Khali. They noticed something fascinating. Old caravan paths converging on a particular spot near the modern town of Shissa in Oman. Curious, they conducted ground surveys and excavations. What they found astonished them. Beneath layers of sand and stone was a site with the remnants of a large fortified settlement. Walls, towers, artifacts, all buried for centuries. More astonishing was the sinkhole at the center of the site, a massive geological collapse that seemed to confirm local legends. Had the city been swallowed by the earth? Was this the long-lost Ubar? The media seized on the discovery. "Atlantis of the Sands found," the headlines proclaimed. Documentaries were made. Clapp wrote a best-selling book. For a moment, it seemed that myth had become history. The city of Iram, the city cursed and consumed, had emerged from the dust. But as the excitement cooled, questions arose. Some archaeologists argued that the site at Shisra was not a city at all, but rather a fort or caravanserai, a stopover point for traders, not the sprawling metropolis of legend. The structures were impressive, but modest. The evidence of continuous settlement was thin. Perhaps this was not Ubar itself, but one of its many outposts, part of a larger network. Or perhaps Ubar was not a single city, but a concept, a collective name for the rich incense-trading region that once flourished here. The debate continues to this day, but regardless of the precise identification, the discovery was monumental. It showed that legend often holds a kernel of truth, and that stories passed down over centuries may carry memories of real places, distorted by time but not extinguished. The tale of Ubar is powerful not just for its mystery, but for what it reveals about the region and its people. The southern Arabian Peninsula, particularly the area now known as Oman, Yemen, and the UAE, was once lush, vibrant, and deeply connected to the broader ancient world. Frankincense trees grew in abundance here, and the resin was so valuable it was said to be worth its weight in gold. Temples in Egypt, Rome, and India all burned it in ritual. Caravans stretching miles carried it through deserts to ports and cities thousands of kilometers away. Ubar, if it existed as described, would have been the nerve center of this trade, a place of wealth and complexity where merchants, mystics, and kings met. And yet, like so many desert cities, it did not endure. Why? Some say environmental collapse, overuse of water, the drying of wells, or sudden shifts in the climate. Others point to natural disaster, a sinkhole swallowing key infrastructure, or an earthquake weakening the city's foundations. Still others blame social or political changes, the redirection of trade routes, internal conflict, or loss of strategic importance. But the legends persist in pointing to something more poetic, that the city fell because of its pride, its refusal to submit to higher laws, its belief in its own invincibility. This moral undertone echoes the fate of Sodom, of Babylon, of Pompeii. The desert, it seems, doesn't merely erase, it humbles. As you picture Ubar in your mind's eye, you might imagine towering sandstone walls bleached by sun, market stalls under colourful awnings, the smell of spices and incense thick in the air, camels lined up beside wells that plunge deep into the aquifer, a bustling oasis in the heart of nothingness. Now imagine silence, sand creeping over the stones, the market gone, the wells choked with dust, a slow wind curling through what remains. Perhaps a traveller finds a shard of pottery or a bit of carved stone, perhaps nothing at all. That is the essence of Ubar, just enough memory to haunt, not enough to satisfy. And perhaps that's the point. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some are meant to be pursued again and again, so that we remember the cost of forgetting. The story of Ubar invites us to ask what else lies buried beneath the sands of Arabia, what other cities, names, and lives have been erased but not truly lost. For as long as deserts exist, and they will always exist, there will be secrets, and there will be seekers. And perhaps someday in some remote corner of sand, another piece of Ubar will surface. A stone, a coin, a story, waiting to be told again. There are places the earth hides with intention, places spoken of in riddles and songs, but never quite seen, never quite mapped. One such place is Zerzura, the fabled white city of the Sahara, a name that drifts like a mirage across the winds of history. Unlike Ubar, Zerzura was not recorded in the religious texts of a single tradition, but in the whispers of travellers, in the recollections of desert guides, and in manuscripts buried in the libraries of forgotten empires. It is said to lie somewhere in the vast Libyan desert, far from the comfort of oases and trade routes, a city of gleaming white buildings, hidden by mountains and guarded by black giants who speak in tongues no one understands. No one agrees precisely where it is, and yet everyone who has heard the tales is convinced it must be there, somewhere beyond the dunes, waiting. Zerzura appears in medieval Arabic texts like the Kitab al-Kanuz, the Book of Hidden Treasures, where it's described as a city filled with riches, golden statues, and springs of clear water. But it is more than that. It is a paradox, both alluring and elusive. A place that promises rest, wealth, and salvation in a landscape known for its brutal emptiness. For the Bedouins who told the story, Zerzura was not merely a legend, it was part of their mental geography, a kind of shimmering possibility always just over the horizon. A place you might reach if you were lucky, or cursed. The word Zerzura itself likely comes from the Arabic word for little bird, and that's fitting, for it flits through history like a creature never meant to be caught. In the 15th century, a camel driver reportedly stumbled into a strange city in the desert. The people there had fair hair and blue eyes. They spoke no Arabic. They drank from crystal fountains and lived in white houses with ornate carvings. When he returned and tried to guide others back, he could not find the path again. The story spread and grew with each telling. Some said Zerzura held the treasures of ancient Egypt. Others believed it was a Roman outpost or a city of jinn hidden by magical means. Still others thought it was a mirage made real, a projection of desire so strong it took form, but only for a moment. In the 1930s, the myth took a modern twist. European explorers, armed with maps, rifles and trucks, began their own search for Zerzura. Chief among them was Count Laszlo Almasi, a Hungarian adventurer and desert expert whose life would later inspire the character in The English Patient. Almasi was no romantic fool. He was a scientist, a pilot, and a meticulous observer. But he believed in Zerzura. He believed the ancient texts and local testimonies pointed to something real, and he believed it was his destiny to find it. Almasi led several expeditions into the Libyan desert, a land as harsh as it is vast. The dunes stretch endlessly here, broken only by rocky plateaus and the occasional depression. It's a place where your compass can spin from magnetic anomalies and your vision can betray you. Yet he found something. A series of hidden valleys west of the Gilf Kabir Plateau, places no European had documented before. In one of them, Wadi Tal, his team discovered cave paintings, giraffes, ostriches, human figures dancing, proof that the area had once been lush, fertile, and inhabited. Though he never found Zerzura itself, Almasi was convinced he had reached its outskirts. He believed the name might have referred not to a city in the traditional sense, but to a region, a series of lost valleys, shielded by geology and time. His findings, published in his book The Unknown Sahara, ignited new waves of speculation. What if Zerzura was real but had perished thousands of years ago, its ruins buried or eroded beyond recognition? What if the stories were memories of a green Sahara, a time when the desert was savanna, teeming with life and people? There's evidence to support this. Archaeological digs and climate studies have confirmed that the Sahara was once a lush region, crisscrossed by rivers, dotted with lakes, and inhabited by pastoralist cultures. Around 6,000 years ago, the climate began to shift dramatically. Rainfall declined, the rivers dried up, the forests turned to scrubland, then to sand. People moved or died, settlements were abandoned, entire ways of life vanished. Could Zerzura have been one of these? A real place, whose memory endured through oral tradition long after its stones crumbled? Or was it a story invented to soothe the terror of the desert, to give shape to the hope that something lay beyond the horizon other than death? One of the most curious aspects of Zerzura is its consistency. From Bedouin accounts to medieval manuscripts to colonial-era explorers, the city is always described as white, not beige, not golden, but pure white. Its walls, its towers, even its streets. This is not a natural colour in the desert, where most structures were built from mud brick or stone. So what does it mean? Was it a metaphor for purity, salvation, an oasis of light in a sea of darkness? Or did it refer to a specific kind of stone, limestone perhaps, or polished gypsum, that gave the city an unnatural glow? We may never know. The search for Zerzura, like so many quests for lost cities, may say more about the searcher than the subject. It is a mirror for obsession, an invitation to cross boundaries, both geographic and psychological. Those who go looking for it rarely return unchanged, and yet its legend persists. To this day, satellite surveys of the Libyan desert occasionally reveal strange geometric shapes under the sand. Lines, rectangles, even what appear to be circular enclosures. Are these natural formations, tricks of shadow and light, or are they the bones of something ancient, something waiting to be found? Zerzura may never be discovered in the conventional sense. It may never yield its name on a stone or an inscription that says this is the place. But its power endures. It is the promise of refuge in a place that offers none. It is the idea that somewhere, hidden behind the curtain of the present, lies a secret that will rewrite what we know. Perhaps that is why the story still matters, not because it's provable, but because it's imaginable. The desert takes, yes, but it also gives. Visions, riddles, glimpses of what might have been. So imagine now for a moment that you're walking the dunes, wind stinging your face, water running low, and just as you think you can't go on, you see something. A glint of white on the horizon, a shape that seems too perfect, too structured. You move toward it, heart racing. But then the wind rises, the shape wavers. It vanishes. Was it real? Was it ever there at all? You may never know, but you'll never forget it. That is Zerzura, a city of absence, an idea that haunts the very notion of discovery. And in its way, it may be the most powerful lost city of them all. Not because it once stood in stone, but because it still stands in the imagination. It rose from the desert almost overnight, a city not born of need or geography, but of a vision, an act of will from a man who believed himself the chosen of a single blinding god. Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten, was unlike anything Egypt had seen before. It did not grow over centuries like Thebes or Memphis. It was not built near an ancient necropolis or beside a delta marsh. It was carved into the sands of Middle Egypt by decree, its foundations laid not with the traditions of past pharaohs, but with the revolutionary dreams of one man, Akhetaten. Before him, Egypt had worshipped a vast pantheon, gods with falcon heads and jackal faces, gods of the Nile and the afterlife, of fertility and war, but Akhetaten swept all of them aside. To him there was only one true deity, the Aten, the sun disk, the radiant orb whose rays touched all life. He saw himself not merely as king, but as the high priest, the earthly bridge to this celestial power. And to serve this god, he abandoned the religious and political centers of Egypt, moved his court into the desert, and began the construction of a city that would reflect his divine revolution. The city would be Akhetaten. Today it is known as Amarna. In its brief life, Akhetaten was magnificent. Spanning nearly 8 miles along the Nile, it included royal palaces with open courtyards, vast sun temples with no roofs to block the Aten's light, administrative buildings, homes for the elite, workers' quarters and sculptors' studios. The city plan was revolutionary. Unlike the dark sanctuaries of Amun-Ra, Akhetaten's temples were open-air, filled with sun. Statues of the god were replaced by the sun itself, radiating down on the faithful through long colonnades and courtyards. The art, too, transformed. Gone were the rigid, idealized depictions of pharaohs and gods. In their place were intimate, almost human scenes. Akhenaten embracing his wife Nefertiti, playing with their daughters, basking together under the Aten's rays. Figures were rendered with elongated faces, curved hips and heavy eyelids, a stark contrast to the muscular symmetry of earlier dynasties. Some saw it as a distortion, others as truth. What was certain is that Akhenaten had not only founded a city, he had created a world. But the world he built was fragile. The priests of Amun had not vanished. They had simply been pushed aside. The people, too, were unsettled. The Aten offered no stories, no afterlife, no divine justice, only light. And Akhenaten's obsession with his god often led to political negligence. Foreign affairs faltered. Territories were lost. Territories were lost. Egypt's traditional gods may have been overthrown, but they were not forgotten. And as the sands shifted, so did the loyalty of the court. Akhenaten died after a reign of 17 years, and what followed was erasure. His city was abandoned, his monuments defaced, his name scratched out of history. His successors, first the mysterious Menkaure, then the child king Tutankhamun, moved the capital back to Thebes and restored the old gods. The cult of the Aten was declared heresy. Akhetaten, once filled with the songs of devotion and the hammering of builders, fell silent. The desert took back what it had only briefly lent. For centuries, the location of Akhenaten's capital remained unknown. Then, in the late 19th century, archaeologists began uncovering strange ruins near the modern village of El Amarna. At first, the scale of the site seemed inconsistent with Egypt's major capitals. The city had no long lifespan, no massive temple complexes like Karnak, no royal necropolis comparable to the Valley of the Kings. But as they dug deeper, they found clues. Inscriptions praising the Aten, fragments of boundary stelae detailing the city's founding, and above all, the art. Scenes of Akhenaten and Nefertiti in their distinctive style, basking in the sun's rays, arms raised in praise of a god that had no image but light. It became clear this was Akhetaten, and in the sands of Amarna, archaeologists had found not just a lost city, but the physical remains of one of history's most radical revolutions. The Amarna letters added another dimension. Found in the ruins of an administrative building, these clay tablets contained diplomatic correspondence between Egypt and its allies, or rivals, in the Near East. Written in Akarkian, the diplomatic language of the time, they revealed a complex web of alliances, pleas for military aid, gifts exchanged between kings, and complaints from vassals. What was striking was the tone of some letters during Akhenaten's reign. There were urgent cries from Egyptian governors in Canaan, warning of rebellion and enemy invasions. These messages went unanswered. Akhenaten, it seemed, was more focused on his religious vision than on the crumbling edges of his empire. The letters painted a picture of a king devoted to the heavens but disconnected from the earth. Today, walking through the ruins of Amarna is like stepping into a paused moment in time. The outlines of buildings remain. Doorways open into courtyards now filled with dust. The great temple of the Aten still bears the foundation of its massive pylons, though the columns are long gone. In the royal tomb, carved into the cliffs east of the city, scenes once depicted the death of Akhenaten's daughter and the mourning of the royal family. Time has faded them, but the sorrow still lingers. Nearby, workers' villages give us glimpses of daily life, modest homes, pottery shards, tools, all evidence of a bustling society caught in the sweep of one man's spiritual experiment. For all its ambition, Akhetaten was doomed by its dependence on a single figure. When Akhenaten died, the city lost its purpose, and without that purpose it had no defenders. What makes Akhetaten so compelling is not just its rise and fall, but the eerie way it mirrors later utopias. Bold visions founded on idealism, built quickly and just as quickly abandoned when reality pushed back. It is the physical embodiment of a moment when one man tried to remake the world in light, and for a few brief years succeeded. In most histories, Akhenaten is remembered as a heretic, a failure. But in another light, he was the first true monotheist, a precursor to spiritual revolutions that would come centuries later. His god had no face, no temple statues, no myths, only light and life. His city, Akhetaten, was not just a home for this new faith, it was an architectural sermon, a city as prayer. And so Akhetaten sits in the desert, forgotten by many, but never fully lost. It was never buried like Pompeii or destroyed by conquest like Carthage. It simply faded quietly, leaving behind a ghost city that speaks of brilliance and blindness, vision and vanity. In its bones we hear the echo of an impossible idea, that one man, through sheer belief, could build a city for the sun. The question that lingers isn't whether Akhetaten was great, but whether greatness can ever survive when it stands alone. Perhaps that's why it haunts us still. Because in every ruined temple and crumbling wall, we glimpse the bright, terrible beauty of a dream too pure to last. In the long, dry curve of the Niger River, where the Sahel stretches its arms between the Sahara and the savannas, there once stood a city that glittered beneath the sun and hummed with the pulse of empire. Gawi, quiet now, remote and often overlooked, was once the beating heart of West Africa. Long before the rise of Songhai's military might, even before Timbuktu drew the scholars of the world, Gao had flourished as a hub of trade, culture and kingship. It was a city where the gold of West Africa met the salt of the desert, where camel caravans brought not just goods, but ideas and strangers from lands so distant they arrived with tales of snow and oceans. Gao existed where empires were born and buried in the sand, and though much of its former majesty lies beneath the soil, its presence still echoes, in oral traditions, in ruined walls, and in the restless shifting of desert wind. The origins of Gao are ancient, and like the Niger itself, they meander across time and terrain. The city is first mentioned in Arabic texts as early as the 9th century by Al-Yaqubi, who referred to it as one of the most important towns of the Sudan. At that time, Sudan meant not the modern nation, but the vast swath of sub-Saharan Africa known to Arab geographers as the land of the blacks. Gao was the capital of a powerful kingdom even then, but archaeological evidence suggests its roots stretch far deeper, possibly as early as the 5th or 6th century. Gao began not as a single city, but as a pair of settlements, one on the eastern bank of the Niger, where markets bustled and artisans worked metal and clay, and another on the western bank, where rulers buried their dead in richly adorned tombs. Together, they formed a centre of trade and kingship that predated many of the more famous cities of Africa's golden age. What made Gao flourish was not just its location, though that was critical. It sat at the nexus of trans-Saharan trade routes. To the north, camel caravans carried salt, cloth and glass across the desert from Morocco and Algeria. To the south, forest kingdoms provided gold, ivory and kola nuts. Gao became the middle point, the mediator, and in that position it grew wealthy. But Gao's story is not just one of commerce. It is a tale of evolving power, of shifting identities. In the 10th century, the city was ruled by the Tsar dynasty, a line of kings who converted to Islam and began to link the spiritual life of Gao with the wider Islamic world. The famous Andalusian historian Ibn Hukal described Gao in the 10th century as a large town with many rich merchants and a vibrant Islamic culture, complete with mosques and schools. But Gao was never merely a copy of the Arab world. It retained its own character, its own rhythms. blending Islamic influences with local traditions in a synthesis unique to the Sahel. In the centuries that followed, Gao's prominence only grew. By the 14th century, it had become the capital of the mighty Songhai Empire, one of the largest empires in African history. Under rulers like Soni Ali and Askia Muhammad, Gao reached a zenith of military and cultural power. Its armies expanded across the Sahel, and its administrators developed one of the most sophisticated bureaucracies in the region. Askia Muhammad in particular was a towering figure, a reformer, a devout Muslim, a builder of institutions. After his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1497, he returned with architects, scholars, and clerics to enhance Gao's spiritual and intellectual stature. He constructed a grand mosque, established Islamic courts, and built the famous Tomb of Askia, a pyramidal mud brick structure that still stands today, a solitary sentinel to a forgotten grandeur. Gao in those years was not merely a city but a capital of ideas and influence, a place where law, language, and faith met in delicate balance. Yet Gao's rise foretold its fall. Empires once bloated on conquest always become vulnerable. The very rivers that carried its trade could carry invaders. In 1591, Moroccan forces equipped with gunpowder weapons crossed the desert and shattered the Songhai military. The fall of Gao was sudden and brutal. Its scholars were exiled or killed, its libraries plundered, its rulers deposed. The city was never the same. Over time, it diminished from imperial capital to provincial outpost, then to little more than a dusty town clinging to its ancient river. But while Gao faded from political maps, it did not vanish. Its memory lingered in griot songs, in family names, in the oral traditions passed from one generation to the next. Beneath its modern streets and fields lay the bones of an empire, waiting. Archaeologists began to uncover that buried past in the 20th century. Excavations at Gao Seni, east of the modern town, revealed the city's Islamic past. Mosques, cemeteries, and houses that date back to the 9th and 10th centuries. The discovery of finely glazed ceramics from as far as China and the Middle East showed how global Gao once was. Metalworking remains, including iron tools and copper objects, pointed to a sophisticated economy. At Gao Anchent, west of the Niger, they found royal tombs, Slavish burial chambers where kings were interred with jewelry, weapons, and imported artifacts. The layout of these tombs and the style of their contents suggest a complex fusion of local beliefs and Islamic ritual. A reminder that Gao's greatness was built on blending, not imitation. Yet much of Gao remains hidden. The shifting sands and the passage of time have erased structures, smoothed over walls, and collapsed once proud buildings. The Niger floods yearly, and its waters have both nourished and obscured history. Political instability and lack of resources have made sustained archaeological work difficult. But every time a piece of pottery is pulled from the earth, every time a stone foundation is mapped, a new part of Gao's forgotten story is told. This is not a city lost in myth or swallowed by jungle. It is a city half remembered, one foot in the past and one in the present, its legacy waiting to be fully understood. Today, Gao is a quiet place again. A town of traders and farmers, soldiers and schoolchildren, but walk its streets, especially near the tomb of Askia, and the past feels close. The mud brick minaret stands like a beacon, defiant and dignified. Women draw water from wells as they have for centuries. The river still flows, slow and brown, as if it remembers. And in the evenings, as the heat cools and the light fades, you can almost hear the echoes, the clang of blacksmiths, the call to prayer, the murmur of a scribe reading poetry aloud by candlelight. Gao may be buried, but it is not dead. It is a city in the soil, a story beneath the surface, a whisper in the wind that carries across the Sahel. And in the rising interest in African history, it is beginning to rise again. Not in empire, but in memory. And that may be the most enduring empire of all. In the northwestern deserts of Mesopotamia, where the arid plains stretched endlessly beneath a blistering sun, there once rose a city that seemed to defy both time and empires. Hatra, mysterious, silent, and stoic, stood not as a seat of ambition, but as a bulwark against it. Surrounded by towering sandstone walls and ringed by bastions built to withstand the thunder of armies, Hatra was a fortress city, a place where desert and stone came together to forge a miracle of survival. For over 2 centuries, it held its ground in a region racked by imperial war. The Romans came with legions, the Parthians with swift horse archers. Later, the Sassanids would try again and again to breach its walls. All failed. And then, like so many great cities of the ancient world, Hatra disappeared into silence, abandoned not by force, but by time. Today, what remains are ruins, but ruins so hauntingly intact, they whisper of a city once protected by more than mere walls. The story of Hatra begins in the 2nd century BCE, during a time when the Seleucid Empire, the eastern successor of Alexander the Great's fragmented dominion, was losing its grip on the vast territories of Mesopotamia. Into the vacuum came the Parthians, fierce horsemen from Iran, whose decentralized rule allowed local dynasties to thrive in the frontier regions. It was in this context that Hatra emerged, an independent Arab kingdom, nominally under Parthian influence, but in practice ruled by its own dynasty and fiercely self-reliant. The city was a melting pot, Arab in origin, Parthian in style, yet deeply influenced by Greco-Roman and Mesopotamian traditions. Its location was strategic. Nestled between the Roman Empire to the west and Parthia to the east, it became a key stop for caravans crossing the deserts from the Euphrates to the Tigris and beyond. With trade came wealth, and with wealth came ambition. And defense. Hatra was designed with survival in mind. Its walls, which stretched nearly 4 miles in circumference, were not merely defensive. They were architectural marvels. Constructed from limestone and basalt, these fortifications featured alternating towers and bastions, some rising nearly 30 feet. 2 concentric walls surrounded the heart of the city, and between them were open areas for maneuvering troops or storing supplies. Arched gates guarded by colossal stone guardians regulated entry into the city. Inside, the buildings were laid out with order and purpose, clustered around broad ceremonial avenues, temple complexes, and palatial compounds. At its height, Hatra may have held as many as 50,000 inhabitants. Priests, traders, nobles, soldiers, and slaves, all living in the shadow of its sacred and sovereign purpose, to endure. Central to Hatra's identity was its religious life. The city was known throughout the ancient Near East as a place of divine power. It was called Beiti Elaha, House of God, and pilgrims came from far and wide to worship at its great temples. The main sanctuary was dedicated to Shamash, the Mesopotamian sun god, but shrines also honoured a pantheon of deities, including Nergal, Atargatis, Halat, and Hermes. Here, in the dust and heat, spiritual traditions from Persia, Arabia, Greece, and Babylon fused into something new and uniquely Hatrine. Towering statues adorned the temples, stone figures with solemn eyes and flowing robes, eternally watching over worshippers. One statue of a priest-king remains remarkably intact, his carved beard still sharp, his posture still dignified after nearly 2 millennia. The spiritual strength of Hatra may have played a role in its military resilience. Soldiers fought not just for walls, but for gods, and the gods, it seemed, favoured Hatra. But Hatra's greatest claim to fame was its resistance to empire. In 116 CE, the Roman Emperor Trajan launched a sweeping campaign into Mesopotamia. He captured several major cities and advanced deep into Parthian territory. Hatra, surrounded and outnumbered, stood firm. The Romans could not breach its defences. A few decades later, Emperor Septimius Severus tried again, laying siege to the city around 198 CE. His legions brought siege engines, battering rams, and determination, but again Hatra repelled them. It was an embarrassment to Rome, this desert city, so far from the imperial capital, defying their most powerful armies. The secret to Hatra's endurance was not just in its walls, but in its people. The city had learned how to fight, how to wait, and how to endure. For centuries after, Hatra maintained its independence, nestled in the buffer zone between empires. It survived the ebb and flow of regional conflicts, the shifting allegiances of kingdoms and tribes. But no city can stand forever. In the early 3rd century CE, a new power arose in Persia, the Sassanid Empire, determined to reclaim and centralize the Iranian plateau and all its surrounding lands. Around 240 CE, the Sassanid king, Shapur I, launched an assault on Hatra. This time, the gods did not intervene. Shapur's forces breached the Great Walls, sacked the temples, and massacred or enslaved the population. The city was abandoned shortly after its silence began. Centuries passed and the sands slowly crept over the ruins. The world moved on. Hatra, once a name feared and admired by emperors, became a legend. Only local Bedouin tribes remembered the City of the Sun, whispering tales of cursed ruins and golden statues buried beneath the earth. In the 20th century, archaeologists rediscovered the city, peeling back layers of sand and rubble to reveal something astonishing. Hatra had survived, not in spirit alone, but in stone. The city was remarkably preserved. Its walls still stood, its temples still bore their inscriptions. Statues of kings and priests looked out over the desert, their faces pitted by time but unbroken. The architecture of Hatra continues to mystify and inspire. Its unique blend of Hellenistic arches, Mesopotamian layouts, and Iranian motifs defies categorization. The city was a cultural crossroads, but it was also an innovator. Some of the earliest examples of large-scale vaulted construction in the Near East were found here, precursors to techniques that would later influence Islamic architecture. The art of Hatra, too, is distinctive, stylized, solemn, yet expressive, with an emphasis on symmetry and symbolism. Inscriptions in Aramaic script record the names of rulers, donors, and gods, offering tantalizing glimpses into the lives of its people. They speak of victories, dedications, and oaths sworn before the gods of the sun and war. In recent decades, Hatra has not escaped the ravages of modern conflict. Located in northern Iraq, it became a target during times of war and instability. In 2015, the world watched in horror as extremist militants attacked the site, smashing statues and damaging temples in a campaign against cultural heritage. Though many artifacts had been preserved in museums, the loss was deeply felt. Yet Hatra still stands. Restoration efforts continue, and global awareness has grown. There is a renewed effort to protect such places, not just for their historical value, but for what they symbolize. Hatra is more than a ruin. It is a testament to resistance, to the fusion of cultures, and to the endurance of faith and architecture in the harshest of environments. To walk among Hatra's ruins today is to feel the presence of a city that was never meant to be forgotten. The silence there is not emptiness, but memory. The shadows that fall across broken archways and headless statues do not hide the past. They reveal it, slowly, to those willing to look. Every chipped stone, every faded relief, tells a story of ambition and defiance, of gods once adored and walls once defended. Hatra was not a capital of empire, but it was something greater, a sanctuary. A place where people lived behind walls not to conquer others, but to preserve themselves. And in doing so, they created a legacy that even time and violence could not erase. The fortress in the sand still stands, and it still watches. In the heart of the vast Taklamakan desert, where shifting dunes rise like frozen waves, and the wind whispers secrets across a barren wasteland, lie the ghostly remains of a city long forgotten by the world. Nia, once a prosperous oasis town, flourished at the edge of oblivion. In a place where no rainfall nourishes the land and the sun scorches the earth like fire, it is hard to imagine that anything could survive. But Nia was a jewel of the southern Silk Road, a place where merchants rested, cultures mingled, and kingdoms watched the world pass by on camelback. Its story is buried beneath centuries of silence, preserved in wood, cloth, and letters that somehow withstood the ravages of time. This desert city, which stood firm between the 2nd century BCE and the 4th century CE, was once the seat of a powerful kingdom, and though the sand eventually swallowed it, Nia's whisper endures. The Southern Silk Road was not just a trade route, it was a lifeline connecting China, Central Asia, India, and the Mediterranean world. While the northern route passed through Dunhuang and skirted the Gobi Desert, the southern path braved the perilous Taklamakan, a name that in Uyghur means "go in and you'll never come out." Along this daunting stretch of sand, oases were more than resting points. They were essential for survival. Niar was one such oasis, situated near the Niar River, where meltwater from distant mountains sustained life in a region otherwise hostile to it. Its location made it an indispensable link between the empires of Han China and the distant lands of Persia, Rome, and beyond. Nia was more than a pit stop. It was a city-state, ruled by kings, protected by warriors, and enriched by trade. Archaeological evidence shows that Nia had a well-developed administrative system, cultivated land, and a multi-ethnic population that included people of Indo-European, Iranian, and East Asian descent. The wooden tablets recovered from the ruins reveal a city with laws, taxes, judges, and officials, hallmarks of a society that was both structured and literate. The people of Nia farmed wheat, barley, and grapes, and raised animals for meat and wool. Their houses, made from timber and mud brick, had courtyards and hearths, and their lives, it seems, were not unlike those of rural communities elsewhere, except for the caravans that brought silk, spices, gems, and ideas from every corner of the ancient world. The city was part of the ancient kingdom of Jingjue, which appears in Chinese historical texts from the Han dynasty. According to the Han Shu, or Book of Han, Jingju was a minor kingdom in the western regions, with a population of several thousand. Its people wore felt and wool, lived in tents and houses, and relied on the wealth of their oasis to sustain them. Though it was never an imperial powerhouse, Jingju held strategic importance. The Han dynasty maintained garrisons and emissaries in the region, ensuring that this remote kingdom remained friendly to Chinese interests. In exchange, Nia and its rulers gained protection, prestige, and access to the immense markets of the Chinese world. Perhaps what makes Nia so remarkable is how well it was preserved. In the early 20th century, British-Hungarian explorer Aurel Stein embarked on a series of expeditions into the Taklamakan. Armed with maps, camels, and an insatiable curiosity, he braved dust storms and isolation to uncover the ruins of long-lost cities. It was in 1901, during his first major journey, that he reached Nia and began unearthing treasures that had lain hidden for over a millennium. What he found astonished the academic world. Unlike many ancient sites which yield only stone and pottery, Nia offered up documents, textiles, and wooden artifacts preserved by the desert's dryness. Among Stein's most astonishing discoveries were the Nia wooden tablets, official documents written in the Kharosti script, used across ancient Central Asia. These tablets revealed contracts, land grants, property disputes, tax records, and even letters of petition to the local ruler. One letter from a woman to a magistrate complains of being mistreated by her mother-in-law and requests protection, a hauntingly personal voice from across the ages. Another document describes the sale of a slave, listing details about age, ethnicity, and price. These writings opened a window into everyday life in a desert kingdom once thought to be a myth. The people of Nia left behind more than just words. Textiles discovered in the ruins include robes dyed with intricate patterns, woven carpets, and remnants of silk and wool, some of them still vividly coloured after all these centuries. Furniture, tools, jewellery, and statues all surfaced from the sand, providing a picture of a community that blended East and West. Buddhist imagery appeared alongside Greco-Roman motifs, and the craftsmanship suggested influences from India, Persia, and China. Coins from multiple empires circulated in Nia, further proving that this desert town was cosmopolitan in nature. Its cemetery revealed bodies buried with objects of value, suggesting spiritual beliefs in life after death, or at least a desire to carry a piece of life into the beyond. But why did Nia disappear? The reasons remain debated, but most scholars believe environmental change played a major role. The river that once fed the city began to dry up, possibly due to changes in glacier melt or shifting river courses. Without water, the oasis shriveled. As the fields withered and the wells ran dry, the people of Nia likely packed what they could and abandoned the city. Some may have moved north to more stable settlements. Others may have perished in the harsh desert, favouring new paths that bypassed Nia entirely. By the 5th century CE, the city was gone, left to the dunes and wind. The sands preserved it, but also erased it from memory. For over 1,000 years, Nia existed only as a rumour, a ghost city in the stories of passing caravans. Only when the 20th century explorers uncovered its remains did the world remember what was lost. Today, the site lies in China's Xinjiang region, where politics, archaeology, and cultural heritage often collide. Though it is protected, access is limited, and the artifacts recovered by foreign expeditions now reside in museums in London, New Delhi, and Beijing, testimonies to a place where civilizations once met beneath the desert sun. To stand at Nia is to see the bones of a city that defied nature for centuries. The wind howls across sun-bleached timber posts that once held up roofs, past the broken remnants of irrigation channels and shrines. There is no sound of voices now, no bells of camels, no scent of spices. But Nia speaks, in its way, through the crackle of ancient documents, the weave of forgotten textiles, and the long shadow of a city that lived, loved, traded, and faded into sand. In a world that often moves too fast to remember its own past, Nia reminds us that even in the most remote corners of the earth, civilization finds a way. And sometimes, when the sand recedes, we hear its voice again. In the golden silence of the Libyan coast, where the Mediterranean's waves crash upon a forgotten shoreline and the desert breathes hot winds across crumbling ruins, lies one of the grandest cities ever built on African soil. Leptis Magna, once a shining jewel of the Roman Empire, now sleeps beneath a blanket of sun and sand, its marble arches and silent forums standing as ghostly echoes of imperial grandeur. Far removed from the more famous cities of Rome and Athens, Leptis Magna tells a different story, a story of ambition, trade, power, and the tension between nature and civilization. This was not merely a Roman city in Africa. It was a Roman city of Africa, shaped by Berber roots, Carthaginian memory, and imperial pride. As sand drifts across broken columns, and the sun casts long shadows over deserted streets, the spirit of Leptis Magna still stirs, whispering tales of emperors, merchants, and the unyielding desert that reclaimed what was once thought eternal. Long before Rome claimed it, Leptis Magna was a Punic settlement, founded by Phoenician traders from Tyre or Sidon, around 1000 BC. These seafaring people established outposts across the Mediterranean, and Leptis, situated at the mouth of the Wadi Lebda, offered a perfect location for trade between North Africa's interior and its coastal neighbours. By the 6th century BCE, Leptis was under the control of Carthage, a powerful city-state with its own Phoenician origins. Under Carthaginian influence, Leptis Magna prospered, trading in ivory, gold, salt, and exotic animals. Berber tribes from the interior brought goods to market while ships carried olives, grain, and oil to distant shores. Even in its earliest days, Leptis Magna was a crossroads, a place where desert and sea met, and where culture flowed like currency. When Rome defeated Carthage in the Punic Wars, it absorbed Leptis Magna into its growing empire. Yet it wasn't until the 1st century BCE that the city truly began to rise in prominence. As Roman influence deepened, Leptis Magna embraced the classical ideals of Roman architecture, governance, and infrastructure. Amphitheatres, baths, aqueducts, and basilicas sprang up across its growing urban core. Though technically under Roman rule, the city was allowed a measure of autonomy, its local elites integrating seamlessly into the empire's bureaucratic machinery. Among these elites was a man whose legacy would transform Leptis Magna forever: Lucius Septimius Severus. Born in Leptis Magna in 145 CE to a prominent Berber family of Roman citizens, Septimius Severus rose through the ranks of the military and political world with cunning and strength. In 193 CE, during one of the empire's frequent crises, he seized power and became emperor. Severus, the first Roman emperor of African origin, never forgot his hometown. During his reign, he initiated a vast program of building and beautification in Leptis Magna, transforming it from a prosperous provincial city into one of the grandest in the empire. He poured imperial funds into monumental architecture, expanding the harbour, building an immense basilica, erecting a new forum, and commissioning the now famous Arch of Septimius Severus, which still stands today as a triumph of Roman engineering and art. The Severan building program gave Leptis Magna a distinct identity, a blend of Roman elegance and African scale. Unlike the compact, orderly layouts of many Roman cities, Leptis spread out with grandiosity, taking full advantage of the surrounding space. Its forum was one of the largest outside Italy. The Severan Basilica, with its soaring columns and intricately carved friezes, rivaled those in Rome itself. The city's amphitheatre, built to seat over 15,000 people, was dug into a natural depression in the earth, blending construction with the desert landscape. At its peak, Leptis Magna may have housed as many as 100,000 residents, making it one of the most important cities in Roman Africa. Yet even amidst imperial splendour, Leptis Magna never lost its regional character. The markets of the city overflowed with olive oil, one of its most valuable exports, stored in massive ceramic amphorae and shipped across the empire. Merchants from the Sahara traded spices, salt, and ostrich feathers, while Roman traders brought glassware, wine, and fine fabrics. The city's streets buzzed with many tongues: Latin, Berber, Punic, Greek. Temples honoured Roman gods, but also local deities, with Libyan names and Carthaginian ancestry. This multicultural richness was not an exception in Rome's African provinces. It was the norm, and Leptis Magna exemplified how empire could be both a blanket and a patchwork. But, like so many cities that reached dazzling heights, Leptis Magna's glory was not to last. In the 3rd century, following Severus' death, the city began a slow and steady decline. The reasons were many. Political instability rocked the Roman world, and with it came economic stagnation. Trade routes shifted and tax burdens increased. As Rome faced invasions and internal strife, its far-flung provinces often bore the brunt. Leptis Magna's coastal position, once a blessing, became a vulnerability. Pirate raids from the Mediterranean and attacks by nomadic tribes from the desert grew more frequent. By the end of the 4th century, the city was a shadow of its former self, and when the Vandals swept through North Africa in 439 CE, they sacked Leptis Magna and inflicted damage it would never recover from. The Byzantines attempted to rebuild in the 6th century under Emperor Justinian, but the city's fate was already sealed. The harbour silted up, cutting off its trade lifeline. The aqueducts fell into disrepair. The desert crept closer with each passing decade. By the time Arab armies conquered the region in the 7th century, Leptis Magna was largely abandoned, and then, like a dream receding into the distance, it vanished, swallowed by sand and time. Centuries passed. The world changed, but Leptis Magna remained, entombed beneath layers of silence. Local shepherds and nomads wandered its buried streets, unaware of the glories beneath their feet. In the 19th century, European explorers began to take interest in the site, and systematic excavations in the 20th century revealed a treasure trove of ancient marvels. Unlike other Roman cities that were looted for stone or built over by modern towns, Leptis Magna had been forgotten so completely that its ruins were almost pristine. Temples stood with their pediments intact. Roads still bore the marks of ancient cartwheels. Statues, fountains, mosaics, all lay where they had fallen. It was as if time had paused. Today, Leptis Magna is one of the best preserved Roman cities in the world. Its ruins stretch for kilometers along the Libyan coast, a surreal vision of marble and memory amidst sand and sky. Yet, despite its significance, Leptis remains largely untouched by tourism, due in part to Libya's political instability. The civil unrest of the past decades has threatened both the preservation of the site and access to it. Archaeologists worry about looting, neglect, and environmental damage. Still, the city endures. Visitors who manage the journey speak of an almost spiritual experience. Wandering streets where senators once strolled, standing beneath the arch of an emperor born of Africa, hearing only the wind as it passes through colonnades that once echoed with laughter, debate, and music. Leptis Magna is a monument not just to Rome, but to resilience. It shows how culture can bloom in the harshest of places, how empire can build in collaboration with the local, and how time both destroys and preserves. Here, in the emptiness of the Libyan coast, one finds a city that defied the desert for centuries, and whose silence now speaks louder than any surviving voice. Rome may have fallen, the Severans may be dust, but in the broken stones of Leptis Magna, a story continues to live, carried on the wings of the wind and the watchful gaze of a forgotten emperor from Africa. Carved into the towering cliffs of rose-coloured sandstone, Petra rises like a mirage from the arid deserts of southern Jordan. It is a city that defies the very elements surrounding it, a hidden jewel sculpted not from earth or brick, but from the rock itself. Known as the Rose-Red City, Petra has long captured the imagination of travellers, historians, and explorers alike. Its facade, bathed in the warm glow of the sun, reflects millennia of human endeavour, resilience, and mystery. Half as old as time, Petra stands today not only as a testament to the engineering genius of its creators, but also as a symbol of cultural convergence in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The origins of Petra trace back to the Nabateans, a nomadic Arab tribe who settled in the region around the 4th century BCE. The Nabateans were master traders and skilled negotiators, known for their ability to thrive in the deserts that others deemed inhospitable. Petra became the heart of their kingdom, a strategic oasis that controlled vital caravan routes connecting Arabia, Egypt, Syria, and the Mediterranean. This location was both a blessing and a challenge. The city sat at the crossroads of ancient trade networks, but it also had to withstand the brutal climate of the desert and the constant threat of rival powers. Unlike many ancient cities built atop the earth, Petra was sculpted from the rock. The Nabateans carved homes, tombs, temples, and theatres directly into the sandstone cliffs, creating a city that blended seamlessly with the natural landscape. The most iconic structure, Al-Khazne or the Treasury, rises with ornate Corinthian columns and intricate carvings, its facade towering over 40 metres high. Despite its name, the Treasury was most likely a royal tomb, a monument to the city's wealth and artistry. The craftsmanship of Petra reflects influences from Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian styles, an architectural melting pot symbolizing the city's role as a cultural crossroads. But Petra was more than a city of stone beauty. It was a marvel of engineering, particularly in water management. The Nabateans, living in a desert where water was scarce and unpredictable, developed an intricate system of dams, cisterns, aqueducts, and channels to capture and store rainwater. This innovation allowed the city to sustain a large population, irrigate gardens, and support the caravans that stopped to trade and resupply. The waterworks protected Petra from flash floods, which could devastate desert settlements, turning the city into an oasis amid the harsh landscape. Petra's economy was based largely on its role as a hub of commerce. The city prospered as a center for the incense trade, transporting frankincense and myrrh, precious resins used for religious rituals and perfumes, across vast distances. Alongside these goods, Petra's markets offered spices, textiles, precious metals, and exotic animals. The wealth accumulated from this trade funded Petra's magnificent buildings and fueled its political power. For several centuries, the Nabatean kingdom thrived, commanding respect and influence in the region. However, Petra's prosperity was not without peril. The city's wealth made it a target for rival empires, and its control of trade routes drew the attention of the expanding Romans. In 106 CE, the Roman Empire annexed Nabatea, transforming Petra from an independent kingdom into a Roman provincial capital. The Romans brought their own customs, architecture, and administration, adding new structures such as the Roman-style amphitheatre, temples dedicated to their gods, and expanded roadways. Though under Roman control, Petra continued to flourish for several centuries, remaining a vital commercial centre. Yet, over time, the shifting sands of history and the desert began to conspire against Petra. Trade routes changed, favouring sea travel and new land paths that bypassed the city. Earthquakes in the 4th and 6th centuries caused significant damage, destroying aqueducts and buildings, and disrupting the city's water supply. Without reliable water, life in Petra became unsustainable. By the 7th century, Petra had been largely abandoned, slipping into obscurity and becoming a lost city, hidden beneath desert sands and forgotten by the outside world. Petra's rediscovery in 1812 by Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt sparked a renewed fascination with the city. Burckhardt, disguised as an Arab pilgrim, journeyed into the desert to see the ruins firsthand, overcoming tribal suspicions and the harsh environment. His accounts inspired other explorers, archaeologists, and travellers to seek out Petra, unveiling its mysteries piece by piece. Since then, Petra has become one of the world's most iconic archaeological sites, attracting visitors from across the globe who come to witness its dramatic beauty and walk the winding Sikau, the narrow, winding gorge that serves as the city's entrance. Today, Petra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the new 7 wonders of the world, yet it remains a place of paradoxes. Its preservation faces threats from tourism, natural erosion, and environmental challenges. The desert's wind continues to wear away the sandstone, and flash floods occasionally sweep through the canyons. Efforts by Jordanian authorities and international organizations aim to balance the preservation of Petra with its role as a cultural and economic resource for the region. Beyond its architectural and historical significance, Petra holds deep cultural meaning for the peoples of the Middle East. It is a symbol of heritage, resilience, and identity. For the Bedouin tribes who have lived in the surrounding deserts for centuries, Petra was not just an archaeological curiosity, but part of their ancestral lands and stories. Today, many Bedouins serve as guides and caretakers of the site, sharing the ancient city's secrets with those who venture into its rose-red corridors. Petra's allure also lies in its mystery. Despite extensive research, much about the city's origins, daily life, and ultimate decline remains uncertain. Archaeologists continue to uncover new chambers, artifacts, and inscriptions, revealing glimpses of a society that balanced commerce, culture, and survival. The city's tombs speak of elaborate burial rituals, its temples suggest diverse religious beliefs, and its streets hint at a bustling cosmopolitan life once lived in the shadow of towering cliffs. In a broader sense, Petra represents the ingenuity and adaptability of human civilization in the face of adversity. It was a city built where life seemed impossible, carved out of stone and sustained by ingenuity and determination. Petra's story is a reminder that even in the harshest environments, human creativity can carve out spaces of beauty, culture, and connection. The city's rose-red walls do not merely tell the tale of an ancient people, they speak across millennia to us today, urging us to remember the delicate dance between nature and civilization, and the enduring power of place. As the sun sets over the deserts of Jordan, casting a fiery glow on Petra's facades, one can almost hear the echoes of ancient traders bargaining, priests chanting, and artisans carving stone. The city's silence is profound, yet full of life, a silent witness to the passing of time and the persistence of memory. Petra remains a testament not only to the Nabateans, but to all who have sought to leave a mark on the world, to create beauty from hardship, and to survive against the relentless tide of the desert. The deserts of the world, vast, unforgiving, and seemingly barren, conceal more than just shifting sands and ancient winds. Beneath their surface lie secrets waiting to be uncovered, lost cities, forgotten civilizations, and entire chapters of human history buried by time and nature. While explorers and archaeologists have unveiled remarkable sites like Petra, Leptis Magna, and Ubar, the truth is that many desert cities remain hidden, some beneath dunes, others beneath rock and salt flats, and some, perhaps, forever lost to the desert's relentless embrace. As technology advances and new methodologies emerge, the future of desert archaeology promises to rewrite what we know about these lost worlds and deepen our understanding of humanity's resilience and adaptation to harsh environments. Desert archaeology has always been a challenging field. The extreme conditions, scorching daytime heat, freezing nights, scarce water, and the ever-moving sands, have deterred many from undertaking extensive explorations. Yet paradoxically, deserts also serve as preservers. Unlike humid climates where organic materials quickly decay, the arid environment can keep ruins, artifacts, and even ancient texts remarkably intact for millennia. This unique preservation creates a treasure trove for archaeologists. But finding these treasures requires overcoming enormous logistical and technological hurdles. One of the most exciting frontiers in desert archaeology is the use of remote sensing technology. Satellite imagery, aerial drones, and LiDAR, light detection and ranging, have revolutionized the ability to detect buried structures without disturbing the fragile landscape. LiDAR, for instance, emits laser pulses to map the ground in high detail, revealing subtle topographical changes that can indicate walls, roads, or foundations beneath the sand. This technology was famously used to uncover extensive ancient cities hidden beneath jungle canopies in Central America, and it holds similar promise in desert regions. Researchers are now applying these tools to vast desert areas in Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, uncovering outlines of towns, fortifications, and irrigation systems that were previously invisible. Another breakthrough comes from advances in geophysical surveys and ground-penetrating radar, GPR. These techniques allow archaeologists to peer beneath the surface and generate detailed images of subsurface structures. Unlike traditional excavation, which is costly, slow, and potentially damaging, these non-invasive methods enable scientists to target specific sites for further study, conserving resources and protecting fragile environments. In deserts, where shifting sands can easily cover or uncover ruins, GPR and geophysical tools provide invaluable snapshots of what lies below. The integration of big data and artificial intelligence also holds great promise for desert archaeology. Machine learning algorithms can analyze vast datasets from satellite images, historical records, and previous excavations to identify patterns and predict where lost cities might be hidden. By combining environmental data, such as ancient riverbeds, water sources, and trade route reconstructions, with archaeological information, researchers can narrow down search areas with unprecedented precision. These technologies accelerate discovery and help to prioritize efforts in regions where resources for fieldwork are limited. Despite these technological advances, desert archaeology remains deeply dependent on human expertise, local knowledge, and cultural sensitivity. Many of the most significant finds come not from high-tech scans, but from conversations with indigenous peoples, Bedouins, Tuareg, and other desert dwellers, whose oral histories preserve memories of ruins, water sources, and ancient trade routes. Their stories often guide archaeologists to sites long forgotten by the wider world. Collaboration with local communities also ensures that excavations respect cultural heritage and promote sustainable tourism and education, helping to protect sites from looting and degradation. Among the regions where desert archaeology holds particular promise is the Sahara Desert, the world's largest hot desert. For centuries, the Sahara was thought to be an endless sea of sand, inhospitable and empty, yet recent discoveries have challenged this notion. Researchers now know that the Sahara was once a much greener, wetter environment, supporting complex societies, rivers, lakes, and thriving settlements. Satellite surveys and fieldwork have uncovered ancient lakebeds, rock art, and traces of cities where none were thought possible. The search continues for sites like Zerzura, the legendary White City of Saharan myth, and other unknown urban centers that may rewrite the history of human habitation in the region. In the Arabian Peninsula, the Rub al-Khali, or Empty Quarter, is another area of intense archaeological interest. This vast desert spans thousands of square kilometers of shifting dunes and salt flats. Historically, it was thought to be a barren wasteland, but archaeological surveys have revealed remnants of ancient wells, caravan stops, and settlements that supported nomadic tribes and trade networks linking Mesopotamia, Arabia, and Africa. The discovery of Ubar, the so-called Atlantis of the Sands, though still debated, opened the door to the possibility that multiple lost cities lie beneath the desert floor, waiting for new exploration tools to reveal them. Central Asia's deserts, stretching across modern-day Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, also hide remnants of the Silk Road's ancient past. Cities like Nia and Lulan, once vibrant trading hubs, are being re-examined with modern technology, revealing intricate urban layouts and trade infrastructures. These sites tell stories of cultural exchange, economic innovation, and survival in environments once considered marginal. Continued excavations and research promise to deepen our understanding of the connections between East and West, and the vital role deserts played in global history. But desert archaeology is not without risks. Looting remains a grave threat to many sites, especially in politically unstable regions. The black market for antiquities incentivizes the destruction of archaeological layers, erasing vital context and knowledge. Climate change also poses new dangers. Rising temperatures and changing weather patterns can accelerate erosion and desertification, further endangering fragile ruins. Preservation efforts must therefore go hand in hand with discovery, balancing curiosity with conservation. Looking ahead, interdisciplinary collaboration will be crucial to unlocking the desert's secrets. Archaeologists, geologists, climatologists, historians, and computer scientists are increasingly working together to reconstruct ancient environments and human interactions. This holistic approach enriches not only our understanding of lost cities, but also offers lessons for modern societies facing climate change and resource scarcity. The desert, long seen as a symbol of desolation, emerges instead as a landscape of innovation and resilience. A place where humans have adapted, thrived, and left enduring legacies. The future of desert archaeology also invites us to rethink our notions of history and civilization. Lost cities beneath the sand challenge linear narratives of progress and decline. They remind us that human stories are complex, interconnected, and often hidden in plain sight. As new cities emerge from the sands, they expand our vision of what ancient civilizations looked like, diverse, dynamic, and deeply intertwined with their environment. In this quest, the sands themselves become both obstacle and ally. Their shifting nature can conceal but also protect. What is lost today may be found tomorrow, and what is discovered must be preserved for future generations. Each dune, each grain of sand, holds a fragment of human memory, waiting patiently for those who will listen. As we stand on the cusp of new discoveries, the promise of desert archaeology beckons us forward. The deserts whisper ancient tales beneath their golden waves, inviting us to uncover cities yet to be found, and histories yet to be told. In the endless dance between sand and stone, past and present, the story of the lost cities beneath the sand continues, waiting to reshape our understanding of civilization and the enduring spirit of humanity.